A lot going on with the Cubs in the world of baseball. Will they bring Cody Bellinger back? What are their offseason plans? Let's talk a little baseball with our friend Paul Sullivan from the Chicago Tribune. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Thanks for hanging out with us here on the Cubs Baseball. What do you say, everybody? It's Mick Gillispie with Paul Sullivan. You see him over there, Sully, working on his stuff. Welcome to the Cubs Baseball channel. Sully, great to see you, man.
Good to see you. Just saw you last week in Nashville and had a good time. And, of course, nothing's happened since. So, you know.
Well, a minor league, right now, a minor league catcher.
Oh, who's that?
It was yesterday, Jorge Alfaro to a minor league deal. So
you're way ahead of me. I'm
no, that means that nothing's happened so far. Great to see you, man. How long have you been on the baseball beat in Chicago?
Full time since '94. I was a backup baseball writer starting in '89, like work weekends and features and stuff. But the beat was not mine until '94, and then I became a baseball writer in general in 2013, and now I'm just a general columnist doing all sports.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, as long as I can remember, and I've been reading your stuff, and then it's like great to see you at winter meetings. You weren't thinking that the Cubs were really going to get Shohei Ohtani. You were never buying into that.
No, and not because they weren't going to make an offer. And I haven't even seen yet if they have made an offer, but I assume they at least explored parameters, especially when you see what the end deal was and all the deferred money and all the very unique aspects of the contract that, is going to really go down in baseball history. Not only as the most expensive, but as one of the most different contracts ever, just because of what he wants to do as far as giving more money to the owners to, fill all the spots around him and make a championship team. I think the Cubs, when you look at that, could have gone in that direction and offered a contract like that. Whether the Ricketts have the taste for paying 10 years of deferred payments, I don't know if that would work, but certainly when you see what he wound up signing for and its value in present day money, it was, affordable.
Yeah, I mean, it is crazy when you look, though, at a guy making $700 million that right now is a DH. You can get a lot of players for that. Do you think the Cubs will bring Cody?
They're just doing it for the on the field part. I think
right.
Part of this was his, his marketing power, and not just in the United States, but in Japan and other places. I think that's probably half of the salary there is going to go to marketing him.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. I mean, he's huge in Japan. He's like Michael Jordan was back in the 90s and 2000s. I mean, he's on everything, so their brand obviously just had a big uptick. So, I mean, I get that part of it. I don't think he was ever going to leave L.A. I think he would have signed with the Dodgers had they had the DH back then, and the Angels were the next best thing. Just the fact that the guy's kind of a Hollywood type guy, doesn't really talk to the media. And to me, I'm thinking, like, if I'm the Cubs and I'm paying this guy $700 million, I'm doing it partly to try to build on the marquee sports network, right? And I think that there's this perception that the TV network has underperformed, and you would hope that if you go out and you get, someone of his caliber, that they would be heavily involved in that. But you guys go to talk to him and he doesn't even talk. So, it's like unless he pitches that day, right? You think that would have changed?
Yeah, I think that was the the MO in Anaheim. I don't know if that would change now that he's with the Dodgers. There was a different dynamic there. The number of Japanese writers covering the Angels, outweighed the American writers by, I don't know, 2-1 or something like that.
Wow.
So there wasn't really a whole lot for him to, he didn't have a whole lot of American media in his face. He had a lot of Japanese media in his face, and he clearly didn't want to deal with it. And he's not the first one, that feels that way. And it's not a cultural thing either. There's a lot of American players that don't want to deal with the media either.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah.
He was more pronounced, I think, because it went so long and he was in the news and he wasn't talking. I believe they said he hasn't spoken to the media since early August, and he also, blew off the MVP interview famously, where he had his dog with him and all that. So I don't know what the answer to that is. I would hope that he's a little more forthcoming this year now that he's a star, but now that he's like the star,
right?
I guess we'll find out.
Do you think that the Cubs will sign Cody Bellinger?
That's a good question. It seems like he's almost falling to them in the long run, with the Yankees getting Soto and the Dodgers with Ohtani, and not that they were going to go back, but I know that he loved it there. Toronto, I think, still in it, losing out on Ohtani. The Giants probably out of it now. So I think he could go back to them. I'd be surprised, because at the end of the season, when we said goodbye to him, it was almost like, hey, nice knowing you. Thanks for covering me. It was really, it seemed like a final goodbye for us and him. But, we'll see. Boris is a smart guy, the best agent in the business, I think. And, he's going to get, people think he's going to come back at a discount for the Cubs. I just don't see that. He always gets what he wants. And I think Cody loved it here, but I think he would love it anywhere.
Yeah, right. For the right amount of money. I kind of thought of him as, as a free agent. I know it's different, but his season reminded me of the first season that Andre Dawson was with the Cubs. Just how quickly people fell in love with him. And it's hard to do that in Chicago. It's just because you're a free agent and you sign with the team doesn't mean that Cubs fans will endure you like they have with both of those guys.
Yeah, no. And it happened pretty quickly. I don't, if you remember, he didn't get off to a great start, and then, but he was okay. And then he really started picking up before he got injured in the I think it was the Houston game. And then he was out for a while. And then when he came back, he just basically carried the team in July and August, when they made their comeback from 10 games under.
Mm-hmm.
So, and even at the end, he kind of trailed off at the end, like almost all of them except Suzuki did. But, overall, great season. Cub fans did love him. I think they loved him more in center field, where he could, interact with the bleacher fans.
Yeah.
I think he's, it's weird to me to have a Gold Glove caliber center fielder and you stick him at first base as much as they did. But, maybe in the long run he's bound for first base as his position. But I think right now he's still a really good center fielder.
Yeah, right. Well, part of it too is need, right? I mean, the Cubs just don't have a first baseman that they can slide in there. Matt Mervis is the closest thing they have to it, right? And then he came to Chicago last year and underperformed. So
you never hear his name anymore. I mean, we were talking about him a lot last winter.
Yeah,
like part of the next core, him and Crow Armstrong, and couple other guys. And really right now, if you think about the young core of hitters, you have Christopher Morel, who's possibly on the trade block, and Nico, if you still consider him a young hitter, although he's seems like a veteran. He's been up so long. So I don't know. I'm still waiting to see these great young prospect hitters that we've heard so much about. Brendan Davis, obviously, injuries really hurt him a lot. So, they have had some great pitching guys come up, and I'll give them credit for that. But, when they talk about the new improved farm system, I think there's still some waiting to see if that's correct.
Do you think that maybe the struggles that the young guys had, like Mervis and Pete Crow Armstrong, Alexander Canario couldn't get on the field, played into the move to fire David Ross and hire Craig Counsell? And what was your take on that whole situation?
I don't think so, because I can't imagine that if Jed wanted these guys playing, that Ross would just sit them, and say, I'm doing what I want. I need to win. But it is my opinion that Ross did, kind of tire these guys out down the stretch by playing almost all of his regulars every day. And, Canario, in the brief time that we saw him, looked like he could hit. I think they tried to give Crow Armstrong some at-bats early when he came up, and he was struggling, made some base running mistakes. It was great defensively in the outfield. But I think they kind of when you got down to the last 2 weeks, you're like, okay, we've seen enough, take a seat. So I understood that. But, I do think Ross, he did factor into the collapse at the end. They had a wild card in their hand, and they should have won it, I think.
Yeah.
Not won it, but they should have gotten in at least to the playoffs, and they didn't. And the manager takes responsibility for that all the time. Obviously, the players really did some really inexplicable defense down the stretch. All of them. Even Nico made some bad plays, and he had one of the best years I've seen of a second baseman and the Cubs. So, I think Ross probably deserved to be gone. If you can get a guy like Craig Counsell, who I think by all regards is one of the best managers, or at least someone who can do the most with the least amount of resources.
Yeah. And now he should have some resources, right? I mean, you would figure that the farm system. Yeah, right. And the farm system's as good as it's been in a long time.
Yeah.
But now it's got to get those guys up, and they've got to perform at the major league level, which has become a big step. It used to be, I thought, A-ball to AA. Now it's AAA to the big leagues. And I don't know why it's changed so much.
Yeah. And then you see, like Morel came up after AA and had very few at-bats in AAA. And, I think he's still got some developing to do, but, that kind of power, I don't know, you don't give up on that early, in my estimation. But who have you seen down there in Tennessee hitting wise that you think is going to really make an impact in a couple years here?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you right now, Pete Crow Armstrong can play. And people on my channel know I've said that. I mean, he's got surprising power. He's got speed. I think he'll struggle like he did. But when he figures it out, it's going to be electric. People are going to love him. He's just got to relax, and he didn't look relaxed.
Does he have any power?
He does. Yeah, he does. Surprisingly, he's got a lot of power. There's another guy named Owen Casey, who the Cubs got for Yu Darvish.
Yeah.
Who could basically, he's got one hole. He swings a lot at this middle end breaking ball. And when he stops swinging at that pitch, everything else that he hits, I mean, the exit velocity is amazing. The way the ball jumps off of his bat, he plays great defense. He's someone who could be a big time player and play a long time in the major leagues, in my opinion. I think he's really good. Honestly, two of the guys that they got rid of are going to be good players. Nelson Velasquez, and I've talked about this over and over again, he's going to burn them with that trade. He is a really good player, but they signed Suzuki, so they didn't have a spot for him. I get that. I just didn't like the trade. I thought they got a lot less than what they deserved for him. I think he could hit 40 home runs, right? And then what's that?
Per at bat in Kansas City were just off the charts. Like, one for 10 at bats or something like that.
Less than that, yeah. Well, and he hasn't even. He's just starting to get comfortable. You know, I'm not saying this is going to be Lou Brock, but I'm just saying like
Yeah.
this guy's going to burn you. The other one is Jonathan Perlaza, switch hitter with power. They just didn't have a spot for him. And part of that, they just have so many good players. And he signed to play in Korea. I think he's going to go over there and do really well. But they have a ton of guys. You know, the outfield is so stacked right now in the system. Kevin Alcantara, they got for Rizzo and the Yankees, you know, the trade with the Yankees. They call him the Jaguar. This guy can hit long, kind of like a Dave Winfield looking guy.
Yeah, I've seen him in spring.
Yeah, he's just like he's got growing pains still too, you know. I mean, he's a free swinger, but man, he can really play and he's competitive and he's good.
Can he field?
He's not bad. You know, he's not Pete Crow Armstrong. I mean, Pete Crow Armstrong's like elite of elite, you know. It's like Sam Fold with speed, you know. And I know Sammy could run, but this guy's really fast. So I really liked him, but there's just so many other guys that are kind of like right on that verge too, where you're like, okay, what's BJ Murray going to do? You know, what's Matt Shaw going to do? Like, they just have that look. You're talking about infield prospects there. The system has a lot of depth in it. You know, when Theo left, he left a farm system and an organization that I felt like was steeped in elitism, entitlement, and it was really time for him to move on. And I know he's the best executive of all time, but that's what Jed took over. And to see where things are now, he's never going to say that. I'm sure that they're like best friends or something, but it's been, he deserves a lot of credit. It really has been phenomenal watching the transformation in that aspect.
Well, I will say that, not to get into the anti-Theo thing, but when Jed had all those guys that he traded in 21, starting with Darvish, Rizzo, Bryant, Javi, he had a lot more, you know, to work with to get these prospects in the system. So I will say that.
Yeah.
But you're right about, Theo never developed any pitching in his time with the Cubs, and usually went outside the organization once they, you know, became a contender in 2015, and that was it. They were going all out since then and trading Eloy and Dylan Cease, although, you know, Eloy didn't turn out to be a big star, but Dylan had, you know, looks like he's still going to be a pretty good pitcher, and for Quintana, that was a bad deal too.
Yeah, but I'm with you on that. What do you think the Cubs will do to address starting pitching? Do you think they go in the trade market? Do they sign someone? I don't think they're going to be in it for Yamamoto, who's like $300 million, but you know, maybe some other guys.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I could see like a Jameson Taillon type. I guess one of the best ones out there after Yamamoto signs is going to be Jordan Montgomery, who's you know, a little older, but has, you know, come up with some big performances and with the Yankees and last year with the Rangers. I don't know what he'd be asking, but I think he is the kind of guy that would really fit in with that pitching staff, especially with Kyle and Taillon. You know, Justin obviously showed that he has Cy Young potential. So I think the starting pitching is going to be pretty decent next year. And, you know, I don't know if they'll bring up Horton, but certainly he should be there. Even Assad looked really good in his starting. They didn't give him any innings, but at least he got some experience there. So I think they're going to be okay in that aspect if they just get like one guy.
Yeah, I think so too. So
who would you like to see? Who would you like to see him get?
I guess if it was me, it's so hard because Glass now, and it looks like he's going to the Dodgers. He's got electric stuff, but he can't stay healthy.
Yeah,
Bieber, you know, was hurt last year, came back at the end. Velo's a little down. He's a guy who can't stay healthy, but he can pitch.
Yeah.
I like Montgomery. I mean, just because of what we saw him do with Texas at the end of the year. I mean, it was like finally the guys got it all figured out, right?
Yeah.
I think that continues. I mean, I would take a risk on him. I just wouldn't want to end up with another Tyon because he was just so inconsistent, and you're paying this guy all that money and you just never know what you're going to get from start to start, although he was better down the stretch. Marcus Stroman, I don't see them bringing him back.
Who's that?
Marcus Stroman.
Oh, no. Yeah, I agree with that. And I thought Tyon had turned it around in that game at Yankee Stadium, and he had a good stretch after that, but then he kind of regressed again. So,
yeah.
But I think, one thing about Tyon is he's very honest with himself, and he's the kind of guy that's not going to, just sit back on that money and say, oh, well, I'm worth this kind of money, but he's going to have to go out and prove it. And I'm sure he'll work at it. I'm interested in the bullpen because we saw how, that was part of Ross's issues that fans had with him was his handling of the bullpen. Of course, there was some injuries with Adbert and everything, but I really would like to see him get Josh Hader. I know those closer deals are always ridiculous for elite closers, but man, just thinking of him in the ninth innings and then, move Adbert maybe to the 8th, 7th, whatever, move Leiter back. Merriweather had a great year.
Yeah.
And knowing, Hader and Counsell have that relationship from Milwaukee, to me, that would make sense. But I also can just flip on that and go, we've seen so many relievers get all the money and then they just stink, and then you're stuck with them.
Yeah. I know it's that's pitching in general, though.
Yeah, but it's worse
contract. Yeah,
elite closer, and then he turns into like just a nothing. That's a killer. Look at that Aroldis Chapman, how great he was, and he got all that money with the Yankees, and then they couldn't wait to get rid of him.
Yeah, right. And then he won the World Series with the Rangers this year.
Yeah.
It was so good in the setup.
And he got one with the Cubs, even though he almost blew it. If they had lost that Game 7, he would have been like the GOAT of Chicago history.
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine if Cubs would have lost Game 7?
Oh, I can. I do. Because, they would be 0 for 100 and whatever years now.
Yeah, right.
I don't think if they would have lost that, I still don't think they would have won one in the next few years.
Yeah, that's so funny. Well, let's talk about your time with the Cubs, like covering the Cubs, being in Chicago. Who are the people you liked covering the best and why?
Cubs wise, or
Cubs wise, and then I'm going to ask you some White Sox questions because something's burning on me with the White Sox. So,
but something's always burning on you with the White Sox.
Yeah, it always is.
Usually. Which players did I like? I'm sorry, what was the question?
Who did you like covering?
Oh, I gotta say I did like covering Sammy, even though we had our moments where we were like, flipping each other off in the dugout or in the clubhouse. But even when we didn't get along, he was just so interesting to cover. Personality-wise, a guy like Kevin Tapani was always good because he was just such a normal guy. I mostly like the managers because, when you're a beat writer, you're dealing with the manager twice a day, for 6 straight months, 7.5 if you include spring training, and you really have to have a decent relationship with the manager. If you don't, your season's going to really be long.
Right.
And I'm really so lucky that I was able to cover Dusty Baker, Lou Piniella, Joe Madden. Even Tony La Russa with the White Sox, who, I don't think he likes me very much, but I loved covering him because he was an interesting guy, and he was always so quotable, and he, some of his quotes got him in trouble with fans, but I enjoyed covering him too.
I asked Gordon Wittenmeyer, who used to cover the Cubs, now he's covering the Reds. But when you write a story and it's hard on a player or front office or whatever, and you run into that person, how do you deal with that? And then what's the the most uncomfortable you've been, like when you put something out there and then someone maybe didn't like it too much?
Well, I've had a lot of those. It would take forever to go through them all, but I was always taught by Jerome Holtzman, who was the Hall of Fame baseball writer, who was in the Tribune when I got there, and when I got into the sports section. So he told me, feel free to rip people, and but if you do rip them, you have to be in the clubhouse the next day. 9 out of 10 times, no one will say anything, but you have to give them the opportunity if they do want to say something to you. So I've always adhered to that rule. I have had things. I remember Frank Thomas told me once that he wanted to be traded, and I said, "Oh, well, who would you like to go to?" And he said, "Anywhere but Alaska." So I wrote the story, put it on the internet, and someone told Frank after the game about it, and Frank had second thoughts about saying that, and he wanted to kill me for that. And I said, Frank,
that's a guy that you don't want to kill you.
But this was at the time.
They called him the Big Hurt.
The Big Hurt, and he's a big guy. And he, I thought he was going to kill me, but this was at the time before, the story's on the internet, but it's not yet in the paper. So he wanted me to kill it before it got to the paper. And I said, no, it doesn't work that way. It's on the internet. It's going in the paper tomorrow.
Oh boy.
But Frank and I, now that he's in the media business as analyst for NBC Chicago, we laugh about it, all the stuff now, and same with Big Z. I had a lot of fights with Carlos Zambrano because
I remember those.
Always doing something stupid. I mean, always. The list is so long of him doing stupid things while I was covering a game, and I would just write about it and say, this is not a good example for kids. Don't act like this. And so we had some knockout arguments, and he called me quite a few names, and even I've told this story before. He asked one of the security guards in Milwaukee. They told him he'd pay him like $10,000 to take me out. And the guy looked at him like he was serious, and he said, "Oh no, I'm not going to do that." So yeah, he did want me exterminated.
You're worth 10 grand.
Yeah, I thought, well, at least he got a price tag on it. But,
yeah, it's a lot
but
of
we
money.
Laugh about it now. He's like very into his preaching and stuff, and I've always found that most of the players that I argued with and managers in the past, as the years go on, you look back and you just think, what a stupid waste of energy arguing about something so insignificant. And there's still a couple guys out there that I think still hate me with a passion, but for the most part, I've made up with anyone that I've ever had some confrontations with.
Patched up, mend those fences,
buried the axe, as they say.
Yeah, buried it.
Yeah.
You have a family heritage with the White Sox. Goes back a long way. Explain that, and then I'm going to tell you why I'm bringing that up. But I remember you telling me this years ago.
Oh, yeah. My grandmother worked as Charles Comiskey's secretary at White Sox Park, Comiskey Park. And, that was back in the days. There wasn't a whole lot of office staff. So she was right in the middle of this. She was the owner's secretary and dealt with the, player contracts and traveling secretary. She knew the players. She partied with Babe Ruth over at McCuddy's. So she passed on some autograph stuff to my mother, and then down to her kids. So it's kind of a weird thing, and I wish I had asked her more questions about it. I didn't know I was going to grow up to be a baseball writer. But so when I was a kid, we just thought, oh, okay, she worked for the White Sox, big deal. But, now I wish I could find all the personnel records and stuff like that. And obviously those are probably lost in history since they moved across the street and probably dumped all that stuff years ago.
Yeah. And you just led me into my next thing. When I first heard them, the White Sox, or rumors that they could possibly move to Nashville, I thought it was just pandering to get a new stadium. Now that Nashville's really the number one city to get an expansion team, there are people that I know who I would say are in the know that feel like the White Sox are serious about that potential. What do you think about that? What have you heard? And what is that a good move for them, or should they stay, on the south side?
Well, I'm basing this on my own speculation. I just don't see Jerry Reinsdorf doing that in his lifetime. I don't see him wanting to leave his legacy in Chicago. Not that he's like, a beloved person or anything, but I don't think he wants to, have people remembering him the way Dodgers fans remember O'Malley. Maybe when he tried to move to St. Petersburg, he would have done it, and then he would have had that kind of legacy. But I don't think he was at that point. He hadn't won 6 rings with the Bulls, so
right.
But he's going to go down in Chicago history as the this prolifically winning owner just because of his 6 rings with the Bulls. Even though if you look at the White Sox history and the one with the White Sox, they really have underachieved most years
right.
that he's owned it. So I don't think he would do that, but I do think that if he decided to sell the team, that someone could buy it and move the team to Nashville, because what do they care?
Right.
They don't care if they're hated in Chicago. And the third thing I would have to say is that I think Nashville would be way better off with an expansion team instead of getting the White Sox, because it's just not a top-notch organization, and not just on the field. I just think they make too many off-the-field mistakes as well. You'd be better off getting, a new owner that, was committed to Nashville as a town, and that, could look at what the Seattle Kraken did, the Vegas Knights. I know it's a different sport, but you can get an expansion team and I think compete a lot quicker than you could back when in the 90s when they, Tampa Bay started or whoever.
Right. And I think they're going to make this where these expansion teams have a better chance to win, looking at what the NHL is did with, you mentioned it, the Kraken and Las Vegas. I think it's going to happen in the next 3 years. How about you?
Them getting a team?
I think baseball expands in the next 3 years. And then where do you think? I say Nashville and then somewhere else. They'd almost have to
expand by 2, right? So
yeah.
I don't really hear of any other town being as close as Nashville, because it was always Vegas, Nashville, and now Vegas is getting the A's. I don't know. Charlotte, maybe?
Yeah, could be.
I don't know. I don't know what
Montreal.
I don't think they're going back to Montreal. I think that ship has sailed. I know that the Rays came up with that crazy theory of playing in both towns, but I think that would be a bad idea. Montreal, it's a great city, but it's not going to support a bad baseball team like some towns would, and you're going to have a bad team for a few years. So I don't know. It's interesting. It certainly shouldn't be in Florida. I think we've proven that fans in Florida don't want to go to baseball games. I don't know, San Antonio. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe Austin. Maybe
Austin.
Salt Lake City. Vancouver. I think they want to be more international, so I think I could see him going back to Canada in the right spot. But I just think it's coming. I mean, I just feel like Nashville's right there, and they're going to find someone else to take that spot, and the one thing that you can say about Rob Manfred is that when he says he's going to do something, that's pretty much what he's done, right? And including changing the rules and getting these teams to get the new stadiums and everything else. I guess the last question I have for you is about the rule changes. You've been covering baseball for a long time. We saw the shift eliminated, the pitch clock, start with a runner at second base. They're trying to do something right now to induce more contact. One of the theories, actually not even theories, but one of the suggestions that I'm hearing is that they may enlarge the baseball. That seems crazy to me.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one. I can't imagine them doing that. I mean, that would be a really major change. You always hear about them moving the pitching mound back, which I thought also was kind of crazy, but I think that would lead to even more injuries. I don't know about the baseball. I just think we're stuck with this. I think it's you just have too many athletes today that are capable of throwing 95 to 100.
Right.
We didn't have that back in the day, and it's because of modern training equipment. And, I mean, players didn't grow up doing, all that stuff as kids back in the old day. And now kids are, grade school, high school, they're working out. So I think pitchers are just going to get bigger and bigger, and the little guys, the Kyle Hendricks types, are going to be a dying breed, unfortunately, because I enjoy watching them pitch as well. So I just think strikeouts and home runs, long home runs and strikeouts are here to stay. That's just the way the game's going to be.
I agree with you. Where can people read your stuff? What are you working on right now? Pitch Paul Sullivan to us.
Oh man, that's tough. I am on Twitter, X. I haven't tweeted in a while for reasons that have to do with the owner of Twitter or X, that I don't appreciate some of his comments. So I'm kind of on a hiatus there. PW Sullivan is my handle. It's also on Threads. Tribune, ChicagoTribune.com, Paul Sullivan. See all my work there. And what am I working on? I'm working on a Craig Counsell story. I'm working on some end of the year stories. 2023 was a really kind of a crazy sports year. You think back on the Final Four. Remember that Final Four? Another, UConn, the only team that, anyone knew anything about.
I know.
Just the changes in sports, the transfer portal. I mean, how many guys went in that transfer portal as soon as their seasons were over? It's free agency, money for the NILs. Just sports is changing at such a rapid clip, and it's just so interesting. The Shohei Ohtani contract is just going to, I think that's going to really have ramifications. The NFL ratings are so huge right now. Baseball ratings, the World Series lowest ever. So you're seeing just a greater divide in the two sports. Just been a fascinating year to me. And, no matter how crazy the world gets, sports is a great place to, just shut that all out and, just watch a good game and great athletes and debate. And, as it's sports is in the whole realm of things is not that important, but, you do need to relax and enjoy yourself in life.
Yeah. Well, have a great holidays. And thanks. Always great seeing you, Sully.
All right, Mick.
And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was fun. Let's do it again. Let me remind you guys, too, as we get out of here, that the channel right now is presented by the Tennessee Smokies Team Store. Smokies won their first championship in 45 years, and they've got the swag to prove it. Check it out for yourself, smokiesbaseball.com/team store.